Ben Franklin once said, "There are two things that are certain in life: death and taxes." I don't want to talk about death. So let's talk about taxes. Yeah, taxes seems like a better thing for civics kind of class. There are this many kinds of taxes that we're going to get into. And on your notes sheet, I packed those pretty close together. Make sure, again, you leave some space for more solid understanding for each one, but you're going to get several details about each kind of tax. So again, spread your stuff out, but leave some space so that you can learn some more things about these kinds of taxes. But let's start with the one that you're most likely to already know about. That would be sales taxes. So sales taxes are kind of like what the name says, and you've probably already paid a sales tax. It's when you get that something extra that you have to pay for most things, for certain things. And so you expect it, oh, it's going to be like $1, but like they're looking for like some extra change as well. It's a percentage. So the amount is going to be different depending on how much it is that you're buying, how much it is that you're spending. And then it adds on a little something extra. Some states do not have a sales tax, but Massachusetts is a state that does. And the ones that do have different percentages of exactly what their sales tax is, and some things that they do and don't require sales taxes for. But the basics is it's something that you have to pay no matter how much money you earn, no matter whatever else. If you're in the state that has a sales tax, you got to pay that. And then so the store, the company, the whatever, sort of collects and keeps that money sort of separate and sends it to the state government. There's no national sales tax here. Some countries do have one, but not the United States. It's state by state. Okay, excise tax. An excise tax. That's see, it's sort of like a sales tax, but kind of different. It's a tax that you pay for something that you're using, or sometimes that's something that you're buying. But governments put an excise tax on specific items. The earliest, and perhaps one that you may already know, is the tax on whiskey that Alexander Hamilton thought would be a good idea, that was mentioned at least once in the Hamilton musical, and led to a little riot while George Washington was president. So that's an example of like an excise tax, an extra little tax on a certain kind of item. The one that you may have seen the most is for gas. It's one weird thing about gas, right? That like it's the only thing where there's a fraction of a penny. There's that extra number at the end of a gas price you might have noticed before. That is a federal U.S. government excise tax of, I think it's now 13.9 cents per gallon. Plus some states put an extra excise tax on gasoline as well. It's one reason why gas costs a different amount when you go from state to state. Not the only reason, but one reason. So gas is the kind of thing you might have an excise tax for. Another one in Massachusetts is cars. I get an excise tax bill for my cars, and it's based on the value of the car. It's basically for using a car, and the more cars I have, and the basically better cars I would have, the more I'd have to pay in taxes. If you've seen my car in the parking lot, you can tell I don't pay much excise tax compared to other cars that are in that parking lot. Anyway, so an excise tax is a specific kind of tax on a specific kind of item, like again, alcohol or like gas or cars or things like that. So the US government can do that, states can do that, and sometimes you have to pay for both, like we do for gas. Okay, income tax. That's another one you've probably, maybe most likely heard of before. Income is, taxes are based on, well, how much income, how much money a person or a company gets in a year. You have to pay this. So this tax gets taken out little by little from people's paychecks, but at one time per year, in April usually, is when you make sure, this is when people talk about doing their taxes, is going through some things and it gets kind of complicated. There's special forms for calculating your income tax. And sometimes it turns out, oh, they were taking out a little bit too much. A little bit too much from my paychecks was going to the US government. Sometimes you realize, uh-oh, they want more money. because they weren't taking as much as they thought. Income tax gets complicated, and we're not going to get into that right now for the basics, but it is just something to know that most people do pay an income tax as long as they're getting money. Um, then they have to pay a certain amount of tax. And this is another thing where some states have an income tax as well as what the federal government charges. And Massachusetts is one of those states. So I pay income tax to the state government and some income tax to the US government. But some states you don't have to. Property tax. So again, the name gives a big clue for property tax. It's based on, property is in like land and home building kind of ownership. So the more and the more valuable the building, the house, the land that you have, the more you're paying in taxes. One thing about this tax compared to the other ones I was just talking about, property tax is only charged by the local government, so the city or the town that you're living in. So in Newton, it's the Newton government getting property taxes. And actually, it's how they get most of their money. We'll get into that later. So places that have more valuable properties, like Newton, for example, get more money in property taxes than places that, don't have such great houses or people who have that kind of property. And tax number 5 is a payroll tax. Payroll is a term for getting like paid. This is something that happens in addition to the income tax money getting taken out. But that's one where like by the end of the year, you sort of like line up and you get more involved. Payroll tax is like money that just sort of disappears, money that I just never see. Again, it's a percent. So the more that you are earning, the more that they take out. But of course, the more you're earning, the more money you end up getting. So those little friends, Rachel had like a time experiencing this. FICA, FICA is one of the payroll taxes that show up on what's often called like a pay stub. So something like this is where you would see that money getting taken out. Again, this is going to the national government, the US government, and eventually this is money that you might actually get back. That's different than all the other ones here. The idea is that it's money that's getting like taken in so that when you retire, when you hit a certain age and you stop working, it's money that's sort of getting saved away, and then you'd be able to get it back. I know that sounds a little weird, and we can get into more solid understanding of that later. But it's another one of the ways that governments do collect money from people to be able to do things for people. That's it for taxes for now.